Hello, happy new week. Welcome to Just Africa, where we deep dive into trends shaping our world. Now, as we navigate into the complexities of development, financing our rapidly evolving economies, one question remains paramount. How do we sustainably finance the infrastructure industries and innovations that will drive our future? While foreign direct investments and external borrowings have traditionally played roles, today we shift focus inward towards the immense and largely untapped potential of domestic capital, particularly pension funds. Now, on Just Africa this morning, we will be looking at pension funds, mobilizing domestic capital for long-term development. I am Olumide Sokoya. Of course, I'm not the only one doing Just Africa this morning. I have my co-anchor, Oyinpreye Krumale. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Happy New Week to you.
Happy New Week. Do you have a pension?
Well, we all have pension.
We should have pension.
We should have pensions. Well, good morning to you. Welcome. It's a brand new week. Talking about pension, I am startled to see or to discover that Nigerian pension or Nigerian pension asset as at 2024 stood about 19 trillion naira.
Yes.
And the government, in order to finance some very, very critical projects, in order for it not to incur debt and to pay interest in those debts, it goes borrowing from those pension funds to finance some of the critical budgets, some of the critical projects across the country. And it's not something that is peculiar to Nigeria. Even in Kenya, they deployed or they developed a scheme called, I think, Public-Private Partnership Implementation Trust Fund. Okay, I think that is to make money or to make capital available for the deployment and the development of critical state, national infrastructure. But for Kenya, I see the fact that they are not only using the pension funds or the insurance funds that they are getting from the state. They also make sure there's a fund, there's an implementation trust fund, PPPIM, there's an implementation trust fund, ITF.
Okay.
That's Public-Private Partnership Implementation Trust Fund, where they can use that as a vehicle to also gather some money into the national treasury to finance critical budgets. That is not also peculiar to Kenya. If you go to South Africa has their own style. In fact, they are reported to have one of the most very, very modeled, strategic and robust pension system that affords even the government of South Africa to fund other critical budget or other critical projects within the country. So I think it is a known mechanism. It's something that most governments are aware of and they deploy it to the fullest. But the thing is, those monies are always guaranteed back to the pensioners because it is the government that is borrowing. It's not private entity, because no matter how buoyant that private entity is, the wherewithal to pay back that fund is not cheap. Because if it's in 2024, our pension asset is getting to 19 trillion naira, then you begin to wonder what entity can borrow 19 trillion naira and be able to pay back. What?
Dangote.
Well, it is capable, but for Kenya, it's going to 1 trillion shillings. 1 trillion shillings. For that of South Africa, I think probably we'll have to unveil that in the course of the program.
Yes, earlier on you said the government borrows. Don't you think now that the government is borrowing this, and of course they're using it for investment, and they will definitely yield back profit, I think some should even go back.
The government won't even make profit in that. Because the government is using it. The previous administration, Muhammadu Buhari's government, was severely criticized for, deploying the ways and means instruments to get money by borrowing money from the Central Bank of Nigeria and to finance the budget deficits. So in the case of the government, these pension funds is borrowing the people's money. So I'm sure there will be a very good line of negotiation between the pension administration or the pension fund administrations or administrators with the government that is going to borrow that specific money. And even if there's going to be profit that will be paid back, it's not going to follow the conventional method whereby they borrow money and they have to pay back with a humongous profit lining the pockets of the creditors.
All right, we'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we're bringing our guests live here on Just Africa. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Just Africa. Today we will be looking at pension funds mobilizing domestic capital for long-term development. And we have a special guest in the studios right here at Just Africa. He is Mr. Charles Fakrogha. Fakrogha. I hope I got that correct.
Fakrogha.
Fakrogha, I beg your pardon. He is a chartered stockbroker. Glad to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Stockbrokers, you know, they help us make lots of money. It's glad to have you this morning.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're looking at pension funds, and we're looking at how it can be mobilized into development across Africa. So my first question is, what role do you believe pensions can play in infrastructural development in Africa?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. For Africa to develop in terms of infrastructure, and when we say infrastructure, we're not talking about roads, only on roads, dams, ports, you know. We're looking at as part of human infrastructure. We're looking at digital facilities. We're looking at transportation, so many other things. Now, and for such project, for such infrastructure, you require long-term funding. And that is where this pension fund comes about. Again, the pension funds, they are not Father Christmas. These are funds contributed by me, you, and other people.
Yes.
And if those funds are going to be mobilized in terms of long-term development for Africa, maybe West Africa, Nigeria, then there must be guidelines. So that, because you're looking at safety of those funds for the contributors, and at the same time, you're looking at reasonable returns for them. Then the third leg, that meaningful development. So pension funds being a source of funding for long-term development is key for African development.
All right, for those, I believe we are all well-versed, but for those who might not understand what pension is, just take us through what pension
Okay, when you see pension, yes, you know, in those days, people used to think when you work for 35 years, they give you one gratitude, they start paying you monthly and all that. But we got to a point, government can no longer sustain that. And they came up with contributory pension scheme. We used to have defined benefits. That is, after this number of years, these are the amounts you are going to collect. And this is what you're going to be collecting at the end of every month. You have serviced the government or your employer. Now, when you are leaving, they are now servicing you. But it got to a point, the government can no longer meet those liabilities. And that is why they now came up with the contributory pension scheme, where as an employee, you contribute certain percentage, maybe 10%. Your employer also contributes 10%, and that fund is sent to, not to the PFAs. Now, PFAs are pension fund administrators, to the pension custodians. They are the ones that keep the assets of this pension fund. The PFAs just administer it. And based on that, we also have to create a commission as the National Pension Commission. That's in Nigeria.
Yes.
I know in other West African countries, they also have a similar bodies that will create guidelines, regulation as to how these pension assets will be deployed. So that when you are now tired of working, you now approach them. Your money is safe and with some reasonable interest.
Okay, so I needed to, before I ask my question, there's something I needed to make clear here.
Yes.
When you were making, you said pension custodians. That is not sent, the PFAs are just there to administer it.
Yes.
Is it You mean PENCOM?
Yeah, PENCOM is the commission.
Is the commission
that regulates activities of both the PFAs and the pension custodian.
Okay, so the pension custodians, what are their names? Because the PFAs, I know of some banks, they have PFAs.
Yes.
So those ones are the ones that are saddled with the responsibility of reinvesting it for benefits.
Yes.
Okay, so the custodians are regulators too?
No, they are regulators. The funds are with the custodians.
Are with the custodians?
Yes.
Okay.
So when the PFAs want to now invest based on money they've collected,
yes,
the guidelines that the PENCOM has given, that's in Nigeria now.
Yes.
I use Nigeria as a case study.
Yes.
They will need to follow those guidelines. It is after that that the pension custodians will release those funds
to the PFAs
for investment.
Great. Okay. So now this is where I want to ask my question. There are questions about government borrowing pension funds. 2024, we're told Nigeria had about 19 trillion naira pension assets.
Under management.
Under management. That's a lot of money.
Yes.
Okay. But though I still consider it small, but that's a lot of money. Now, what kind of risk does it pose for pensioners when the government borrow that kind of money from an emerging economy like Nigeria? Don't the pensioners stand the risk of losing the money if the government doesn't pay back?
Okay, that's the fact, that is the issue itself. Because you will say, even in any credit, you want to take money from a financial institution, let's put it that way. There are things that customer or client, let's say the customer will have to have, maybe collateral, character, capacity, when you take this money,
credit profile,
to pay back, credit profile, your credit score, and all that. But now it's the government, and the Nigerian government has been known to borrow a lot. But I must tell you one thing: the government borrowing is also being regulated. It is the DMO that coordinates, that's Debt Management Office. Okay. So I tell people, once you are able to ascertain the amount of debt that you have, even as an individual, you are already solving your problem because you see the figures. Today, me and you can go in and say, this is how much Nigeria has borrowed, whether domestically or internationally. We know the amount. Once you know the amount, then paying back becomes a different thing. So government now, with their credit rating, you know, like we said, when government is borrowing, they are borrowing with the full chest of that federal government. The worst case scenario, government will print money and pay. Government will print money and pay because the figures are there with DMO. So for the ordinary pensioners or me and you that still contribute, we should not be afraid when government borrows from this pension fund. But the issue will be proper regulation. Okay. At certain point in time, how much can government borrow? And what are the projects government is going to use the money for? I'll give you a typical example. Sukuk. If you are coming to, this Lagos Island, you will see some Sukuk.
Yes. Okay?
This is also government borrowing. But it's specifically project tied. And you can see the implication, the benefits. And not only in Lagos, if you go to other parts of the country, you will see that. Now, our concern is not whether government will pay back. Government is supposed to pay back because this money belongs to the ordinary citizen, ordinary Africans. Government has a duty to pay back because after you have finished your service or you're serving government or private sector, 30, 20, and you are retired, you want to assess your funds. You don't want to hear any story. And that is why it is the duty of the PFAs to ensure that whatever borrowing they are borrowing to government, those funds should be accountable. And we are seeing it all over the place. For every fund this government is borrowing, it's accountable. DMO will tell you the figures. Okay. Now, whether that is political issue or not, government has that obligation to ensure that pension funds assets that were borrowed has to be paid back.
Okay.
But you see, because these projects are long-term, we need those kind of long-term funding. Because if you use short-term funding for long-term projects, I say mismatch.
Okay.
So the pension funds are there. Yes, we want to settle obligations of the pensioners at the end of their working years, but at the same time, they are not all going to come at the same time to collect that money.
Yes.
So that's pension funds, if properly mobilized and proper guidelines put in place, then I believe it's a very good source for government to have this funding to do so many infrastructural projects.
Okay, so there's this follow-up question I need to ask. You spoke about Sukuk and that it is project tied. So
Yes.
Are you saying that the PFAs or the pension custodians have the authority to tell the government that, look, you are borrowing this money. What are the projects you want to use this money to achieve? And they have the right to know. And if they see that those projects that the government is going to give back to them, that this is what we want to use it to do, they are not tenable, they have the right to withhold it. Is that what you mean?
No. What we are saying is not the government that is borrowing this money. We have other individuals. You have some debt funds in the markets.
Okay.
People contribute to that fund, and they use the fund to do other. There are private individuals. Yes. Those ones, the PFAs can ask them. Yes. In fact, the PFA doesn't even need to ask them. The PFAs have their guidelines as to the type of investment they should embark upon.
Okay.
Yes. And PENCOM, which is their apex regulatory body,
Yes.
has given them guidelines. You can invest in infrastructural funds. Yes, if government is saying, this fund we want to use for this, fine. The PFAs can go ahead because it has been noted that even now, we have over, these pension funds, they're investing over almost 100% of their funds in federal government savings bonds.
Yes.
Okay? Now they are saying reduce that to about 80% so that they can also diversify their investment portfolio. The issue there is about diversification. You don't just take all your funds and give to government. You need to invest in government infrastructural projects. You need to invest in not only in bonds,
Yes.
you need to invest also in private equity. And that's what we are saying, yes. But these funds, we know that it is difficult for government to have these funds. But with this mobilization from millions of Africans, Nigeria in particular, these funds are there. You just need to be properly managed in terms of the returns that come from it. And of course, the safety. As an investment expert, if you tell me to go to any investment, you know, this PFA, they also have their own research people. They also have experts who advise them on the type of investments they should embark upon. You are looking at safety. You're looking at returns. You're looking at liquidity. That is, at any point in time, if persons now come and say they are due for their pension obligation, the PFAs should be able to quickly, liquidity now, quickly
Yes.
convert those in their investment to be able to meet those obligations.
All right, so now, still on that diversification, looking at these PFAs, do you think, if in diversifying investments, do you think there are any risks that might be involved, or any risk that might prevent them from actually diversifying into, you know, all kinds of sectors?
If any investment expert tells you there are no risks in every investment, there is a risk. Even the so-called investing in federal government savings bond or federal government infrastructural fund, there is a risk. Yes. But what we are saying, the PFAs will look at the risks that is, so you don't take excessive risks. So that at the end of the day, you're able to manage that risk. In fact, we have experts there. Their main job is just to look at all the investment and advise them on the level of risks. Because you are dealing with people's future. So those guidelines has to be followed. And from time to time, we must give kudos to PENCOM. That is the body that regulates the PFAs and the pension industry. From time to time, they give guidelines as to the type of investment you need to do. Not only the type, the quality of the investment. The quality. You want to invest in a company that is embarking on infrastructural project, maybe renewable energy and all that. Now, that company, in their last 3 years of operation, 5 years of operation, they need to have paid some dividends. So that is the return. You know, but in the past, they will tell you, you must be paying dividends. So PENCOM now review it and said, no, you'll be making it difficult for people who actually need these funds. To embark on infrastructural projects that will better Nigerians and Africans. So let's reduce the conditions, but at the same time, not putting the pension contributors at risk, because there should be no story. At the end of their period, when they want to assess their funds, that's the contributors now, they should be able to assess their funds with some reasonable level of interest.
Okay. So the question I wanted to ask is this: pension fund, like you said, it's the kind of asset that guarantees long-term investment. It looks like assets that guarantee long-term investment as cars, pension, insurance.
Yeah.
What next? It's like those are the two we have.
Yes, of course, the capital market is there.
Okay.
The capital market is there. Yes, you can also access funds from the capital market. We also encourage government, and you can see government is also looking at that option. Even the government coming to the market, the debt capital market, to do the savings bond, is also assessing long-term funds for projects. And I would tell you today that that savings bond is one of the safest investments that we can advise pensioners or even anybody to invest. Because when you invest, as little as even 10,000 naira, okay, the funds pay you your coupon on a quarterly basis. So if you, as a pensioner, you have collected your gratuity and you invest in those federal government savings bond, you will see that at the end of every quarter, you are being paid something. So you can manage your cash flow. Because the most important thing there is for you to have cash that you can use to meet day-to-day activities. And federal government will pay. I have mentioned it here. The only time federal government will not pay is when maybe
you are so sure.
Yes, because it's there. It is there. Federal government has to pay. So maybe Nigeria is at war. But today, we can't say categorically that Nigeria is at war. We can't say that it's a natural disaster that will not make government to function, no matter what. But what we are saying, the worst case scenario, it is being backed by the full chest of the federal government. Like I said, CBN will just print and pay. Or
that's the worst scenario.
That's the worst. Ways and means, they can just pay. Okay? Now, we should also look at a situation where these pensioners also understand what they are also doing.
Okay.
They can also increase their contribution. What we are saying is, at the end of the day, it is for the benefit of even these pensioners. If you say, don't invest in a road project because you are not seeing the benefits, the expert can even tell us, by the government borrowing from that fund, the pension fund, and embarking on road projects, tolling it, experts have come and said, okay, in the next 10, 20 years, they can recoup. Fine. The essence there is the quality of the project. Is it going to impact the community? That's the most important thing. So I cannot say, okay, no, don't invest in this project, invest in this project. But we'll look at our problems. What are the challenging things in terms of infrastructure? Power. So I can encourage the government to take these funds and invest in renewable energy.
Renewable energy.
Yes, solar. So that we'll have constant electricity, constant power. And our industries will flourish. And when your industry flourish, you are talking of industrialization. Then the world has left us. We are still behind. Now we're talking of Internet of Things. Why can't we improve our digital internet assets? So I can encourage the government, borrow these funds and use it for those kind of projects. At the same time, it is not only government that is borrowing from this pension fund. Like I said, we have infrastructural funds in the markets that is what they do. So they can also encourage the PFAs, invest in these our funds, because these are the projects we're embarking upon. Because at the end of the day, they know that those projects has direct impact to the ordinary Nigeria, West Africa, and of course, Africa. And we must have experts who are managing these projects. Because you must have a time to flag off, not on those form fair that we see. You just flag off, and at the end, you must have a completion date. And we must see the quality. You deliver this product, this project, and at the end of the day, you will see it. Nobody needs to tell you. Look at the coastal road that has been done. We want to be seeing it. Look at, if I always give example of this Sukuk, because you will see it visible. I don't know if you have traveled between Abuja and Makurdi. Oh, for the first time, I could see that here, because just Sukuk, you will see that, yes, the quality of the road, the quality of that project, and me and you, Nigerians, we are seeing it visibly. But again, you cannot rule out the issue of some unethical practices taking place. You want to give this project to contractors that have delivered, they have the track record, and we have seen what they have done before. Because the essence is, you want to deliver this project to the people, and at the same time, safety of the funds.
Funds, yes.
Because the man who has put in 35 years and has retired and is coming back does not want to hear any story. He wants to see that you give him his money for him to go and start a new life in retirement, so that he will be happy at the end of the day.
One more thing. So what about state and local government projects? Which would you advise?
Okay.
What kind
Yes.
of projects?
States can also access this pension funds.
Like the Blue Rail?
Yes, state can. Exactly. You can see that is one infrastructure you will see. I am not doing PRO for Lagos State government, but I think that is one project I doff my hat for them, because I used it this morning. Okay? 20 minutes, I could tell your people there that I'm going to leave this time. In next 20 minutes, I'm in your office. Okay? Now, you can see the impacts that project has, and you can see the returns. If you see the crowd that they move from Festac to this place, you can see that on a daily basis they are making. So I know it's a huge project, but you can see that the project is generating returns for itself.
Yes.
So it will be easier for them to pay back. But at the same time, I want to also mention that whether it is local government or state, once you take money from that fund, there is an irrevocable standing order. Whether, because government is a continuum.
Yes.
At source, those funds are deducted, because you must have come to an agreement as to how you will be paying
back
the money back. There will be a sinking fund where maybe every month, this is what will be deducted, so that you can now pay back, of course, with interest, because somebody cannot just give you money and you are not paying interest. Then what I want to mention again is we need to increase the pension bracket.
Okay.
Every company, it's in the law. I didn't say it. Every company in Nigeria today, as long as you have maybe up to 10 staff, you should have a pension for your workers. As long as you have 10, so that you are contributing to this fund.
Yes.
The government is having a lot of money to do infrastructural projects, and at the same time, you are securing
their
the future of Nigerian, West African, and of course, African workers. So the man will give his best in the job. Productivity will increase, because he knows that after 20, 30 years working, there is something for him that he can fall back to. Maybe, in fact, they're even saying ROSA, that is retirement savings account.
Yes.
You can even borrow from that to fund your housing project in terms of a NHF mortgage. So if a man knows that after 30 years he's going to retire, he has a roof under his head, then that will even reduce some of the issues of unethical practices we see today, both public and private sector. Because everybody wants to ensure that I cannot work for 30, 20 years, and at the end of the day, I don't have a roof under my head. So with this kind of mobilizing these funds for infrastructural development, making the economy better in terms of infrastructure, like I always say, digital infrastructure is key. We must put that in place. And at the end of the day, we'll increase productivity. And Nigerian worker, West African worker, African workers, at the end of the day, will be better for it.
Okay, lastly from me, I have so many questions to ask, but I know the time will not permit us. So let me just take you through this route. I see that private organizations, first of all, the 19 trillion naira as at 2024 asset is huge, but it's not enough, given the population of Nigeria and the working. And so the thing is, when people pay pension, what organization, institution of government determine and know it can see the record that organization XYZ has paid the pension or paid its own contributory part of the staff in this office, in that organization, into that pension account, and the staff itself had paid. Does this mean that sometimes these regulatory bodies do not have information on how much the staff earns, the percentage the staff is supposed to pay, and the percentage the organization was supposed to pay? Because this is depleting how much we're supposed to have in those accounts.
Yes, that's a very good question. You see, and that is even the issue we have been talking about, because it's a criminal offense. Because it's an act. Pension Reform Act of, I think, 2024, but now reviewed Pension Reform Act of 2014.
Yes.
You know, and I'm sure they're going to review again and put in so many things. It is 10% from your employer.
10%.
You, the employee, you can do 8%. You can even do more.
Voluntarily, but
voluntarily, yes, voluntarily.
But regulatory wide is 8%.
You can decide to do more. And this is collected, deducted at source, and sent to your PFA, who keeps the record. But the funds are now with the custodian. Now, if you are not sure that your organization is remitting, it's very simple. There are pension PFA's offices around you. You go and inquire. I don't want to advertise for any of them, but there are so many of them. You go and inquire. They will give you your statement. And you will see your contribution. You will see that of your employer's own. And if they have not remitted, you will see everything. That is when last your organization remitted to us.
How do I take them up?
Yes. We are coming there.
Okay.
Now, you can now go to PENCOM office. That is the commission now. National Pension. I'm talking of Nigeria now.
Yes.
Now, National Pension Commission. You can now go to the office, go to their website, and you make your complaint. And there are penalties for those companies that have deducted and they are not remitting. Yes. But you see the funny thing, we will see even government agencies.
Let's not
You know, yeah, one can say we give them forbearance.
No.
You know, because during that COVID, there were a lot of things that happened. That COVID period, if I mean, we are seeing what is happening in the banking sector.
Yes.
You know, we can give them forbearance. But now that is over. Ensure that as you deduct from your employee, you also pay your own counterpart funding and remit to the PFAs. It's as simple as that. And like I said, we should encourage more and more SMEs to have this pension for their workers. At the end of the day, it is for the benefit of, it's a win-win. The economy improves because we have large funds that can be used for infrastructural projects. The employer also benefits because the worker will be ready to work because he knows that this employer is taking care of my future. The employee will also benefit, knowing fully well that, when I leave here, this is what I'm going to collect. So you can see it's a win-win-win for everybody. So I'll just encourage government to improve on the regulation, that's using PENCOM now, and appeal to employers to ensure that they make that provision and contribute their own parts. In fact, we have even seen some companies that they will say, employee, don't worry. They will contribute both that of the employee.
18%.
Yes.
18.
Yes. They will, yes. So in that case, we are even telling those employees, you can, if your employers have done that for you, why not still, put more? So that at the end of the day, it's like it's what you contribute. When they invest, you get more at the end of the day. So it is for every Nigerian, every African to have that at the back of their mind that nobody takes care of you when you are old. The issue of trying to rely on your children, they are good though, but nobody does that for you. You have to take care of yourself when you are old. And I'll just conclude by saying, there's nothing wrong to be old. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong to be poor. But it's a tragedy for you to be old and poor. So why not begin to take care of your old age? The first day you are given your letter of employment where you are working, that is that day you start talking to your employer, your HRO, to start remitting. Thank you.
And this is a fantastic place for you to learn. Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Fakrogha. I think we need to have a part 2. There are so many questions. I have so many questions.
It's my pleasure.
But we're glad that we could experience or take just a bit of the wealth of your knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabio.
And this is where we call it a wraps on Just Africa this morning. If you have enjoyed the show, please comment, like, and share on our social media. You can also follow us on our social media page at Sook News TV. I am Olumide Sokoya. Enjoy the rest of your day.